I just think that there's a lot of different things that we need to kind of distinguish and parse out, so we don't fall into our own traps. So yeah, like the Eric Prince story and the Michael Flynn story are actually important stories in and of themselves, even if they don't fit. I mean, I think the immunity thing with Michael Flynn, I'm not convinced that that really means anything, and I don't know what story he has to tell. But I do think that his dishonesty about his contacts with, Russian ambassador is a completely legitimate thing to talk about. The irony with Michael Flynn is that Michael Flynn literally was actually a paid agent of a foreign government, not Russia, but Turkey. And that's actually a big story. That has pretty big implications for U.S. foreign policy towards the Kurds, and how we handle that part of the world. And also Michael Flynn was, hell-bent on war with Iran. So these are important things. The Eric Prince story, that's another great example too. That's a very real story. People jumped on it again as like another sort of, the smoking gun secret reveal. But really what those meetings were about, as far as they've been reported, was they were meetings facilitated by the United Arab Emirates to connect a confidant of Vladimir Putin with people involved with Donald Trump. And the goal was to persuade Russia to pivot away from Iran. That's actually a really dangerous thing. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Russia is going to pivot away from Iran. And I actually think, because of the situation we're in now, I don't think the Trump administration would be in a position to give Russia the type of stuff they'd have to give Russia in order for Russia to give up Iran. But, my point is that is actually a serious foreign policy question. Like, there are people in this administration that want to attack Iran, and that's what's going on. And I also wouldn't be surprised, to be honest with you, like, I don't believe in this whole, some grand Russia conspiracy, but I do think that, this is a group of people that are very prone to influence peddling. And I think, Donald Trump, I'm just going to say this hypothetically, who has any idea? And, I'm sure he would never do anything like this. But, you get some Russian mafia money coming into your condos, and, you don't ask questions, and maybe you don't even realize who you're dealing with. You know what I mean? Like, you might think you're dealing with one group of people, and you're really dealing with another. I think, and then the basic idea that Russia had some interest in our campaign, of course they did. Every power has interest in every other power's campaign. We do stuff like this all the time abroad. And it's not going to save us. It's, I think we need to not fall into the other trap of pretending that, like, there's nothing to talk about there. But yes, the kind of hashtag resistance is, hysterical about it, and they're trying to use it as a silver bullet, and that's true. And that's a problem. And then, I think the other point, I probably missed some of what you said because you outlined a lot, but I don't even, like, to me, I don't think impeaching Trump is the goal. I think the most effective part, I think, I don't want to condemn or judge people who are out with resistance. And I think that if Trump is what got you onto politics in a certain way, that's great. But if Trump is not something that we take to be a representation of the whole corruption and poison of our system, which he is, and an exaggeration of it, and a next step, and a unique danger, all of that, but part and parcel of a whole, corporate co-option of this country, then, I'm not interested in going back to Obama-Hillary times. We need to evolve into something much, much better, or we're not going to survive as a species, in fact. So, yeah, that's what I would say on that.
We can't fall into that trap, right? There seems to be two, disparate opposing forces on the left right now. There is your bitter left, who just wants to rehash the Obama administration and rehash everything that Obama did wrong and find these connections between everything that Trump is doing right now and everything that Obama, did or laid the groundwork for, no matter how specious, no matter how, esoteric, no matter, they just want to make everything about the 8 years everyone was kind of asleep. And so, do I think there should be an independent investigation of Trump's connections to Russia? Absolutely. And even to be more reckless, do I think there's something sketchy as, along the lines that you've outlined there between Trump and Russia, as so far as global plutocrats are involved with one another? Absolutely. I think that any investigation into the, into connections between Trump and Russia is going to find probably something, untoward. I guess my only real critique of this is how this story has devolved out of control, right? And how this, how this how this collusion, which is a relatively vague term, like whatever that collusion was, has devolved into this global, multi-decade conspiracy that rivals something you would see in the Manchurian Candidate, and and how it's now being mobilized, by conspiracy grifters. So my producer is a big fan of Louise Mensch now. Before, he has taken to reading all of her work, and
really?
he is surprised by the insights that she has into the inner workings of the Kremlin. And so, like, there is in this story about global corruption in the 2017 as represented by Trump, there is the potential to have a larger conversation about the state of geopolitics, the state of the state of the American economy, all of that. But it seems like that narrative is being lost in this kind of more shallow one about, well, how did Putin install Trump as the president of the United States to bring about the apocalypse, or I don't know, turn us into one big Mad Max type wasteland. And it leaves the Democratic Party vulnerable, and it leaves them incredibly vulnerable to in 2018 and 2020.
Yeah, let me. First of all, I agree with you 99%, and I'll give you 1 or 2% where I disagree slightly, just in terms of the politics of it in 2018 and 2020. But I agree with you completely. I mean, I think that's what I was trying to say earlier, is that what this whole thing has shown, and again, it's really annoying because it's like, yeah, I mean, we agree. There is something probably there, and it probably has much more to do with just money, corruption, and sleaziness and influence peddling, which is, very common. This might be at another degree, but whatever. It's not some Manchurian Candidate grand conspiracy. And the fact that people like Louise Mensch are blowing up, a lot of people have made this point, that it's like it shows that you can go far in mainstream media if your conspiracy theories and irrationality are the right kind of conspiracy theories and irrationality. And there's no doubt that there's a ton of people who want to obsess over Russia. Some of them, frankly, for like really direct reasons. They completely fucked up a campaign. And it's much more, career preserving to talk about Russia than the fact that you, discourage people from knocking on doors in Wisconsin. I think can understand some self-preservation there. But I do think that everybody's always looking for a silver bullet. The only thing I would say in 2018, 2020 is I think that, and this in some ways it's not a defense of the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party is an absolute, mess and really incoherent, although they've come together, they're not great, but overall, like, better than I expected them to be on Gorsuch. The way the questioning on him focused not just on, really important issues like women's health and, and social equality, but they also went to the structure. Like Sheldon Whitehouse really was like, look, you're there on the court to do the bidding of corporations. And that's what this 5-4 thing is about. And so you have that structural questioning, and then the fact that they are going to force the nuclear option, which they have to do. They have to filibuster him. They have to force that option. That's, I want to give them a pat on the back when they at least start to slightly step in the right direction. I think the Russia thing, it can help in certain cases with Democrats that, okay, I don't want them there. They suck, whatever. If we could primary them, that's great. Maybe we win an election in the general, maybe we don't. But for people like Joe Manchin and Heidi Heitkamp and those kind of people, when you have a situation where you can start saying, the FBI is investigating this, and I just don't feel comfortable because, my president might be, jeopardized by this foreign power or whatever. That's not nothing in politics. And the fact that Trump is historically unpopular, even as the Democrats continue to besides, pretty much Bernie, pretty much offer no alternatives, have very weak leaders in general. I mean, part of the many reasons that Trump is so unpopular definitely has to do with the fact that there's a sketchy, weird Russia story every day. And for most people that are normal people that don't follow this stuff obsessively, it just kind of fits into the general impression that, like, this is a corrupt, out of control, extreme, and insane White House. And, that's obviously all true. So I think, if they keep drumming it forever and that's all they got, I don't know. I mean, it's not going to succeed on its own. They might just do their usual Democratic strategy, which is that Republicans make things so horrific they win by default. But I think if you put it in the right place and it's part of the mix, it could, you could score some points with it. And I don't really have a problem with that.
So, yeah, I do agree with you, right? I was happy when Chuck Schumer came out, and not only happy, but surprised. And that's sad, right? It was actually a surprise that Chuck Schumer came out and said, hey, you know what? That thing you did with Merrick Garland, that was pretty effed up. We're not going to let you get away with it, without some kind of repercussions. That was surprising because, as you pointed out, the Democratic Party has, it's equal parts corrupt, equal parts weak, equal parts learned helplessness as it comes to, like, actually standing up Republican. They're, in some ways, they're the political party equivalent of Jeb Bush in the 2016 primary debates, just constantly getting smacked around and unable to stand up. And so I was like, yes, you finally did it correctly. And I do agree. I think that the Russia thing is, in some ways, has become Trump's Benghazi, right? For lack of a better analogy. And really, it really is that in some ways. It's the it's the Benghazi for liberals.
Benghazi hurt Hillary. Just to cut in, like, as crazy. I mean, I think honestly, there was less to Benghazi than there is with Russia, and way less with Russia than what liberals want. But the thing with Benghazi is just setting aside the rightness of it, it actually was effective. I mean, they were crazy, and we made fun of them. Like, how many hearings are you going to have? This is nonsense. Well, they kept fishing, they kept digging. That led to the email server. And that was part of what made her campaign not work. So even that crazy nonsense that they went after, and they did all these committees, and they always ended up clearing her substantively, that still actually was pretty effective politically. And, I guess this is the part of me that's kind of low. On one hand, I'm like, we need to have universal health care, and we need to have a serious left robust agenda that's for real. But then on the other hand, I'm like, yeah, I don't really have a problem if Democrats want to start, brass knuckling it and get it a little bit cheaper. I'm fine with that. But, maybe that's just me.
I agree with you. From the point of political expediency, Benghazi absolutely hurt Hillary Clinton. It put this, narrative in the media that she was unfit for the job, and Trump, and this Russia thing is doing a similar thing to Trump. So I think it's absolutely true that it is hurting his support within his own party. It's shaving off some of those Republican voters along with some of his other dalliances. And it is actually hurting him. But I guess I fall more into the camp that, that where I'm like, I would also like to see them focus on proactive policy agenda. Because from my perspective, what this Russia thing is, as you pointed out so cogently, it's that kind of reactive mentality that, well, we're just going to make the other person seem so bad that they have no choice but to vote for us. And furthermore, like some of the rhetoric that's coming out of the Russia stuff. So again, I feel it's constantly necessary because of the climate that other leftist commentators create to constantly harp on the fact that I don't want to dismiss this collusion between Russia and Trump offhand, because there does seem to be a lot of sketchy things going on. And if there needs to be, there does need to be an investigation, needs to be an independent one. Nunes should not be heading anything. But from my perspective, but from my lens, I think that it's demonstrative of the Democratic Party establishment, as you said, trying to escape blame, trying to assuage their own kind of, cognitive dissonance over, hey, Hillary Clinton losing to this clown is an indictment of everything we are and everything we believe in. And so we just can't handle that. right? We can't admit that to be true and also stay in power. But it also acts as a safeguard against having to deal with the sort of progressive insurrection that's going on in the Democratic Party, right? Because if you can position everyone who voted for Bernie Sanders or everyone who didn't support Clinton as somehow being influenced by, the equivalent of Russian cyborgs or Russian bots, as it was, like it. Bernie Bro, what was that article? And I believe it was Salon. Bernie Bros were influenced by Russian propaganda was the headline. Like, you can effectively silence any kind of legitimate opposition. Where it becomes difficult, in our position, is trying to create this space on the left and leftist media where you can be critical of Russia and Trump.
I just had a thought. I had never thought of
before. Go ahead.
Maybe what happened was, and this is just, I might be blowing everybody's mind here, but I just got to say this. Maybe what happened was there was a Russian agent inside the first Clinton administration who told Bill Clinton to deregulate Wall Street, sign welfare reform, increase inequality, and then somehow took over the Democrats in Congress to have many of them go along with the invasion of Iraq and the Bush tax cuts and do even more deregulation. And then they all set it up knowing that would lead to, after Barack Obama didn't do enough on the housing crisis, inequality still spiked, massive student loan crisis. They knew that in 2016 they were sitting pretty to have Trump be president, which they've been planning along for the whole time. So it actually would be the Russians' fault. And we were deceived. The Bernie Bros, we were as Bernie Bros. The Russians got us, man.
You heard it here, folks. First, you heard it on the Benjamin Dixon Show. We got it. We nailed it.
Well, honestly, with theories like that, Michael, I'm surprised you're not on MSNBC. Like, Rachel Maddow better watch out, because that's the kind of connecting the dots that gets you your own whiteboard in an infinite number of push pins. That's that kind of thinking. You can write your own Office Max gift certificate for office supplies to facilitate all your conspiracy theory needs. But no, so I agree with you. I think there's damage to be done, but I think that the damage that is being done is the strategy still emphasizes the exact same group the Democratic Party was emphasizing during the primary election. And that was, this is red meat for liberals, and it's, attacking the Republican support for their own candidate as opposed to reaching to the left, which is what I would like to see from them. Whether or not it's effective is, I guess, immaterial in certain ways to me, because I actually want to see some kind of, I don't know. I'm 26 and I don't have health care, so it's hard for me to get worked up. So I guess what I'm saying is that this strategy might work. It might work. It might work in the way you said. It might lead to a fishing expedition that finds out something incredibly scandalous, golden showers or not. But it's not going to appeal to those who didn't come out and vote. It's not going to appeal to those. And also, just functionally, if I'm to believe that the Russians' multi-decade plan caused Hillary Clinton to only lose by 35,000 votes across 4 states, so that's the thing, right? So let's talk about just sheer numbers. If we're to believe that this plan was, it's just complex multi-decade plan. Some of the timelines I've read go back to the 1984 Miss Universe pageant in Moscow. And Clinton only actually lost by 35,000 votes in a few counties across the Midwest in the Rust Belt. So really, what you're saying is that that the whole plan of the Kremlin could have been defeated by a few trips to Kinko's, to get flyers printed.
But what they did was that Russia must have had an agent that told Hillary Clinton that showing up in the Midwest with Pharrell was way more important than talking about a jobs plan.